should we wait?
Yeah, let's let everybody in, I would say, no? It's
Yeah,
6:59.
I'll let people in. I'll do that. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll just wait a few seconds while everyone connects to the session. Everyone has the chance to join us in the Zoom room. And we'd appreciate if you would please write in the chat where you are joining us from in the world. It's always great to see the diversity of attendees on the sessions. We'd really love to see who's in the Zoom room with us. So we'll give it just a few more seconds and then get started. All right, so I think most people have been able to connect their microphones and cameras. We'd love to see you if you're able to turn on your camera. But first, just to kick us off to this 1 hour coffee hour and PD session on our new Peace and Security Learning resource. Just to introduce ourselves very briefly, my name is Amanda Abram. I'm the director of the Global Schools Program, and I also work on the Ages of Globalization initiative and the UN at Your Doorstep program, which are the initiatives that created this resource. And we also have my colleague Katya on with us today. And we are also joined by a lovely colleague from Compass Education, Kate. So, Kate, if you could also give a wave, that would be really nice. And you will hear from them later in the session. So what we're going to do today is this is going to be a practical hour. So we're going to be sharing our new Peace and Security Learning resource and walking you through the specific document and what was developed by our team, as well as many others that contributed to the development of this guide, and talk about what's actually happening in classrooms in the world right now when it comes to teaching this topic. As we all know, this is a very important topic right now in this moment. And so at the end, we will also have some time where we'll have some teachers sharing their experiences and hopefully time for all of us to unmute ourselves and kind of share what's been going on in our classrooms or in our contexts around the world. Towards the end, we'll also hear from Jennifer from Teachers for Peace. I don't see her on this first screen, but hopefully you are there, Jennifer. We're really glad to have you here with us as well. Um, so I'm going to pass it over to Katya to get us started. We'd appreciate if you could keep your microphones on mute for this first component, but please feel free to put any notes or thoughts into the chat. So over to you, Katya.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. And hi, everybody. It's really great to be here today and to see so many, colleagues joining from across the world and to talk about such an important topic. And I want to start with what's actually happening in the world right now, not in the abstract, but specifically. So the wars in Iran, in Lebanon, in Gaza, in Sudan and Ukraine, and other places around the world, because students are seeing these on their phones, they're hearing about them. And for some of them, it's not a distant reality. It's really a lived reality in their country or community or home. And I want to start with a key figure that shocked me personally, which is that in 2024 alone, wars and political violence forced more than 110 million people from their homes. And according to UNICEF data, 1 in 4 children today grows up in an area affected by conflict. So in terms of what we're seeing today, these are the highest level of displacement and also of militarization since World War II. And even for those of us and those of our students who are not living through war, the world still really feels less safe than it did a decade ago, with polarization, disinformation, mistrust in institutions. They show up everywhere, in our school corridors, in our comment sections, in our staff rooms. And we see students come in anxious, overwhelmed, sometimes angry, absorbing a world that really feels increasingly divided. And I do want to acknowledge here before we go further, if you are joining us today from the Middle East, from Sudan, or from a community directly affected by any of these conflicts, we're not treating these as case studies from a safe distance, but we're treating them as part of a reality our students are navigating, and that many of us are navigating too in many different countries and contexts around the world. And yet across all of these contexts, I would say what I'm hearing is that a lot of teachers are asking to address these topics. And oftentimes they say that they don't know how. They worry about saying the wrong thing. I do, about taking sides, about opening up a conversation that you can't manage in a 45-minute class, for example. So the resource that we want to present to you today, it doesn't ask you to teach about the politics of any specific conflict, but it asks you to help your students build the concepts and the tools to make sense of the world where these things are happening. But before we dive in, I'm going to put a question that I would love to hear from all of you in the chat. And the question is, when these topics come up in your classroom or school context, so issues related to peace and security or current wars or insecurities or discrimination or other related topics, what feels hard for you to navigate? And I would love for you to put this, your answers in the chat so we can read some of them aloud. So yeah, please get started there. And just maybe one word on this as well. This question obviously doesn't only apply to those of us teaching in a conflict zone for it to be relevant, but it's a student asking why people hate each other, or a classroom that's divided over an election, or a child whose parents disagree about what is happening in the news. I would say these are all questions related to peace and security, and they apply to whatever subject we're also teaching, if it's history or social studies, languages. So I'm sure this must be coming up in your classroom or school context in some way. Yeah, let's see what we have in the chat. Okay, yeah, to be trapped in stereotypes, cliches. Yeah, that's, I think, a really hard and a tough one. Emotions of my students and being mindful of their trauma, hoping not to trigger them. Yeah, that's a really important one, especially I think if these children are directly affected by the conflict or have family members. International Day is difficult to navigate. Like minority women from Bulgaria, discrimination, it's important, but war is more dangerous. So that's why we should search conflict prevention solutions, absolutely. Lack of empathy, because it's not directly happening to you. Yeah, I think we see this throughout different conflicts and depending on where we are. The misinformation, yeah, thank you, Eliana, for sharing that. That's a big one. Yeah, reservations made for certain categories of the society, such as scheduled castes. And they're reading newspapers, they want to know, yeah. Yeah, please continue to share in the chat, and we'll pick up on this. And I think some of the things that you mentioned are really the kind of tensions that we're trying to sit with in this resource, and trying to bring some tools and concepts to that you can use. So let me start sharing my screen now. All right, is this coming up for you? I hope so.
Yes, I can see it. Gotcha.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so a quick orientation before we started. Amanda already mentioned it, but this resource is really collaborative effort, and it was co-created by our team at the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and specifically the Ages of Globalization and the Global Schools Program. And we're, yeah, super thrilled to work with teachers and our colleagues at Compass Education. And I know some of them are in the audience today, so quick shout out to Nicole, Elaine, and Kate. If you were here, yeah, huge thanks for the amazing collaboration over the past 2 years on this learning guide, but also many others. So for everybody who's here today, we also have these kind of learning guides on other topics like climate action, ecosystem restoration, gender equality, and some other topics. Who is this guide for? So we designed it really for secondary educators and students ages 14 and up. And it really works both ways, as a full learning journey or as a standalone piece. So you don't have to use everything. Every section can stand alone. You can pick and choose what's most relevant to you. And the resource is really organized around 3 phases, and you can start where you want. In the Discover phase, it's really about giving some topic and topical content and sort of background information to explore what's at stake. Then in Connect, it's where students engage with global voices and also some shared experiences. And then Transform is where they start to reflect more deeply and start thinking also about how they can take action. And here in the table of contents below, you see the different sections with links to the different sections in the resource, but also time estimates. But there are suggestions only, and you can make them shorter or longer as you see fit, because of course you know your students and your context best, and you know what would be most relevant there. So let's start with this first section, see what's at stake. And I just want to pause here for a second and read this first line, because I think it sets the tone really well. And that peace and security affect everyone, and that they're shaping how people live, learn, and connect. And I think this page, what we were trying to do here is to really start with asking students a simple but very important question, which is how peaceful is our world actually today? And it gives them this tool. So when you look at the bottom of the page, it gives them this tool that helps them to answer this question themselves. So it's an interactive tool that you can, for example, directly assign to your students, and they can explore data by country, by indicator, by year. And I think what's important here is that it grounds everything that follows in real evidence. And it lets students do the investigation themselves rather than just receiving information from you. We've also included some videos that you could assign as homework or to watch together in class. There's, for example, one around what is peace building, another one as examples of youth taking action for peace. So these can be quite inspiring to also, start a conversation on the topic. And then on this page, we identify sort of some of the system drivers of conflict and insecurity and some of these underlying issues that are really important. And I just want to call out on them. So it's racism and discrimination, power and governance, inequality and resources, disinformation and polarization, and violence and cycles of trauma. And I think what's important and what we were trying to do here is that these drivers do not act alone. They overlap and reinforce one another. So, for example, if we think about a student and they're living through disinformation, they're probably also living through polarization. And then inequality, for example, will feed discrimination. And trauma oftentimes cycles back into violence. So this page really tries to make some of these connections. And then at the bottom, you have discussion questions that you could also, use to facilitate a conversation on these drivers directly. And maybe also especially related back to your own community or country. Or start, if it's easier, with another country or community to sort of, not touch some of these maybe very sensitive points that you have in your context. So scrolling further on this page, you see some of the building blocks for peace. So this is where we try to explain some of these puzzle pieces that contribute to peace and security. And again, it's also trying to make these connections, for example, to understand that eliminating poverty and hunger can tackle core drivers of instability. Or that access to health and education can contribute to building trust and resilience, or skills to resolve conflict without violence. So you see also a visual that you can use for base of discussion here. And then on this page, you see some of the global frameworks that uphold, our shared rules and values, and that are really also the foundation and shared responsibility that we all have to work towards for peace and security, and that we see, unfortunately, very much threatened today with what's going on. So I think these are, they give just short entry points, but you can click on the links and then also further explore each of these with your students. And then here on this page, I want to pause again on one really this core concept of negative peace and positive peace. Because I think, I mean, I don't know how it is in your context, but in my context, most students and even most adults define peace as the absence of war. So no fighting and no bombs, relative quiet means it's peaceful. But in research and also in the field of peace education, this is what we would normally call negative peace. So it's real, but it's not enough. And positive peace goes a lot further. So it's the presence of conditions that really allow societies to thrive, justice, inclusion, accountable institutions, and trust. So it's not just, having quiet borders. It's really people living with dignity and fairness and a sense of belonging. And I think it's interesting to think about it in a way of how we can also apply this to the school, where students are not, when students are not fighting in a school, it doesn't mean necessarily that the school is peaceful. So, for example, if some students feel excluded or unheard or treated unfairly, the school, I would say, has at best negative peace. And when you apply this to the global level, in most places that experience violence and conflict, positive peace has already been lost for quite a while before fighting might have started. And that could be related to inequality, to governance failures, disinformation, that erode trust, for example. And so the violence is very visible in these events. But what's really interesting, I think, to unpack with your students is what lies beneath. And this is where the resource also asks students to look. And our colleague from Compass Education will talk more about this later when she will bring the systems iceberg to the forefront. All right, going on. Here we are looking at 3 or 4 major sort of distinctions we want to make. One is the negative versus positive peace, but another one is also security versus militarization. And I want to maybe point actually towards a question at the end of this page, which could be an interesting conversation starter with your students, and to ask them how the world might look if even a fraction of global military spending were redirected towards education, healthcare, or climate action. And you could use this visual, for example, for analysis and discussion. And then on the next page, we have another focus on a distinction between justice and punishment. I'll not go into depth here, but I just want to see that this is there because, we can't talk about peace without talking about justice. And this page really opens a conversation about restorative justice. So how can we hold people accountable while also still allowing for forgiveness, learning, and transformation? And I would say this is also a really interesting framework to apply to your own classroom, to your school, where issues around justice and punishment do play out every level of our lives. So it could be, a really interesting entry point as well. And then this page on common myths and misconceptions is, I would say, another part that you could use, for example, to give your students some of the typical things that they might be hearing in their surroundings, like, oh, if there's no war, there's peace, or national security depends mainly on military strength. And these could be really interesting entry points, again, for having these discussions. And they summarize quite well some of these parts that have come before in the resource. And again, you have some discussion questions here as well to facilitate these further. So I'll now hand over to my colleague Amanda, who will continue to take us through the learning guide. But I just want to say thank you to all of you for being here today, for making the time, and for bringing these very difficult conversations into your classrooms. I know they're often very controversial, very sensitive, and very difficult. So yeah, you're definitely my heroes to work towards peace and more inclusive societies that we need more than ever today. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Katja. I'm just going to share my screen really quickly so we can continue going through the resource. Okay, hopefully everyone can see this. All right, great. So as Katja mentioned, she already started taking us through the discover phase. So I'll continue taking us through the discover phase and the connect phase of the learning resource. So where we left off was this explore key concepts page. And so this is somewhat of a summary of what Katja showed of the, positive peace, negative peace, restorative justice is all here on this page for educators, but also for your students. We have seen in some of our other learning resources, educators use these concept charts to really make maybe flashcards or things for students that they can really, take these as study tools and homework. And I also want to point out the reflection questions at the bottom here when working with your students, not only to think about what these concepts are, but also thinking about how these concepts connect. How might inclusion strengthen justice or resilience to support peace? Or how they can actually see these things possibly in action or not in action around them, specifically when it comes to positive and negative peace, like Katja explained. Mm-hmm. And here we also have a page specifically on the stakeholders and systems that really shape peace and security around the world, as it's really a continuous effort across all systems to really move towards positive peace. So we have, once again, all of these puzzle pieces that go together, such as justice systems, international organizations, civil society, media, the private sector. And it's really would be interesting for your students to do a deep dive on how all of these levels of society really cooperate to create lasting peace. So these are different things that they can dive into in the classroom. We also have put here some examples from different regions. And as Katja said in the beginning, we're not seeing these as just case studies, but we did think it was important to contextualize, some of this and, mention things that are happening in the reality for students and educators around the world. And we're also including here, some initiatives that are really trying to move towards positive peace and support young people in these instances. So including UNICEF's Upshift program in Ukraine, a campaign like Voices of Peace in Sudan, and also in Nepal with the youth movement that led to the youth-led protests that in that country as well. So these are things that we'll be able to dive into as well later in the session when Jennifer also shares her example from Teachers for Peace. We've also included a series of worksheets for all of you to really take all of this directly into your classroom and have your students really start analyzing these trends and challenges. So you'll see the first worksheet we've included is investigate your country and community. So these can be printed, these can be written up on the board, these can be done as, a mapping activity with a large piece of paper in groups, but really it's trying to get the students to start thinking about how this really applies to their local context. So we have a series of questions here. For example, what are the main safety concerns in your community? How could youth, schools, or clubs contribute? Who are the key stakeholders? And this goes back to the systems mapping of the different actors that I mentioned on the previous page. And what are some drivers of insecurity? So these are things that they could maybe use a computer lab, they could maybe use a library, or they could also directly interview, other teachers or community members or guardians on how they think about this. And there's various ways they could carry out this research. We've also included a worksheet number 2. So this is kind of taking it from the zoom out lens to taking it really specifically to their school to try to get them to think about, how they can actually be drivers of positive peace themselves. So this worksheet is investigate your school or community. So these questions you'll see are more focused on peace building practices in their school or neighborhood rather than, the wider country and context. So in this worksheet, they can look into maybe policies their school might have to promote respect and nonviolence. Are there safe and trusted channels for reporting bullying or harassment or discrimination? Are these accessible to staff? Does your school have any clubs or awareness campaigns on this issue? Maybe they celebrate some UN days on this issue. Or are there any practices used to resolve conflict or to resolve relationships and repair relationships? You'll see this kind of continues onto the second page, seeing what their school community really participates in, any extracurricular activities, any partnerships that might be in the community. So that's kind of another way to really start them to get them thinking about how they can take action, what they can do to really strengthen peace and security in their neighborhood and school. We also gave them examples of different youth-led movements. And as a teacher myself, I felt like this was, really important to show my students on, how other young people are really taking the lead on these type of topics and issues. So we've given them examples of youth-led movements that are really working on peace building and conflict resolution worldwide. And in this activity, we suggest that they investigate a youth-led movement and consider its impact and think about how what they did in that context could maybe be applied in their communities. So we've given some examples, but these also could be ones that you take based on your local context and your community. And we've also given some research and discussion questions here. What is the mission of the youth-led movement you chose? Who are the key actors? What impact has that movement had? And how could similar actions, as I mentioned, be taken to your own community? We've also provided for you or for your students additional reading and useful resources to build on these ideas. You'll see some courses and publications, websites, and documentaries and films that also can be shown in the classroom and that are freely available for educators and for people worldwide. And just really quickly to take us through the connect phase before I pass it over to our Compass colleagues to give them, time for them to share as well. So as part of this, we also hosted a live dialogue with His Excellency Mr. Miguel Angel Moratinos, as well as Miss Judy Adhikari, who is a youth researcher from Nepal. And His Excellency is a High Representative for the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations and the UN Special Envoy to combat Islamophobia. So as part of this dialogue, which is recorded and can be also used as a learning tool in the classroom, we're really starting to, move students to think about asking questions and really connecting with others on this topic. So you can watch this dialogue that brought together youth leaders and global decision makers. You can click here and access this recording and really think about using it as a tool to see how other youth are already driving peace building across the world. So we also had Musa Keru, he's the founder of Peace Drive in Sierra Leone, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, the president of UNSDSN, as well as Rachel Kamana, the founder of the PAWA Foundation, and Francois Tadai, the founder and president of the Learning Planning Planet Institute. So here you'll kind of see them start talking about this topic, and there's some reflection exercises that can be done in the remainder of the guide. So this is kind of what happened during the live dialogue. We saw people around the world. There was over, I think, 150 to 200 people on live on this session. This is what people were saying as far as what are 2 to 3 keywords that really resonate mostly to them when they think about what peace and security mean to them. So we saw people were really thinking about respect, love, equality, justice, inclusion. This was really great to see, bringing people from all over the world, from I think it was 160 countries, to really think about what we think about as a global community when we think about peace and security. So there was some other polls that were done on the live webinar. You can feel free to look through these in the learning guide. People were talking about what actions they were willing to take, and people were also asked, what can young people do to take advantage of peace and security in their communities? So we really encourage you to watch this live dialogue as a supplement to this learning resource. It can be something that's shown in the classroom. It's free on our website. And then using some of these tools, the Compass Education tools, to reflect on the dialogue. So I think I'm going to pass it over to my colleague from Compass Education to take us through the remainder of this resource.
Thank you, Amanda. Hi, everyone. My name is Kate, and I'm joining you from Compass Education. I should share my screen, yeah? I'm attempting to share my screen. I'm going to walk you through a few more of the tools from the Connect and Transform sections of the resource pack. But before I do, I'd like to engage in the chat again with another question. Just thinking about how we personally connect to peace. I'm going to ask you a question, and before I do, I'd like to give some kind of parameters around how we're going to add something into the chat. When I ask a question, you can think about one or two words or a phrase for your response and type it into the box, but don't hit enter yet. We'll all hit enter at the same time so that we can see each other's responses all at the same time. And that way we can respond to the question without influencing each other, and we can really see some different perspectives. So are you ready for the question? Here it is. The question is, what is an absolutely critical component of peace in your perspective? So what is an absolutely critical component of peace? Take a moment, write your response, but don't hit enter yet. Give us about 15 more seconds. Okay, are you ready? Everyone can hit enter now.
Sorry, could you repeat that question again, please?
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Did you ask to repeat the question? What is an absolutely critical component of peace? Okay, so we're seeing lots of different answers here, many different perspectives. And valuing these perspectives is a fundamental aspect and practice of systems thinking. And systems thinking tools are a focus of today. When we are as educators, when we are thinking about how we bring peace education into the classroom, perspectives are a really important component, a critical component here. Everyone comes with their own context, their own perspectives, and we hope to connect and find more. And so having systems thinking tools can be really, really important and really useful. I'm going to try again to share my screen. If it does not work this time, I might ask another colleague here to do that for me. Okay, I'm not able to do that.
I can screen share for you.
Okay, thank you. So as we get here, okay. So even though we might have a really good understanding of what peace is, and we also as educators feel a responsibility to support students in feeling empowered to take action to really analyze issues and to engage with issues around them, it can feel overwhelming to figure out how to include peace education in our everyday work that we do in the classroom. And I'm guessing that's why many of us are here today. In this resource packet, we offer up a tool to start with, and it's called the Sustainability Compass. Katja, do you mind going up one page? Thank you. We use this tool because we believe that there are basic systems conditions that need to be considered for any complex issue. The Sustainability Compass supports us in thinking about basic system conditions that need to be considered. It doesn't mean that everything always has to be perfectly balanced between these four compass points or these four systems conditions of nature, economy, society, and personal well-being. But it offers us a way to think about how we can accomplish peace. And in order to do that, we need to consider these factors and work on balancing the best we can. The implication is that if we make decisions with these systems conditions in mind, we'll make better and we'll make more sustainable or more long-lasting and more equitable decisions and solutions. So it's a tool that just offers us an opportunity to think about something that's complex from different perspectives, all on the same level. I'd like to go back to the chat where we were all writing what we thought are critical components of peace. And I'm going to ask you to do something with your screens on. I'll say one of the words that have been put into the chat, and I'd like you to point in the direction of the compass where you feel like this falls. So if you feel like this fits within nature, you'll point up to north. If you feel like the word fits within society, you'll point down. If you feel like it fits within the realm of economics and economies, you'll point to the right. And if you feel like it fits within personal well-being, you'll point to the left. And then we can all see each other's screens. So I'll say a few of them. I'll start with unity. Where do you feel like that fits? Oh, I see the emojis here. Education. Justice. Love. Governance. Open-mindedness. Okay. All right, now I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you had a difficult time placing one of these concepts on the compass. You can raise your digital hand or your real hand, it's fine. Raise your hand if you had a really strong gut reaction for where one of these terms should be. You had an immediate gut reaction. Raise your hand if you felt like one of these terms very clearly sat in one compass point. Maybe one was very, very straightforward. So we all had this pull towards different compass points, probably from our own perspectives and our own histories. And if we were in a classroom, just with this simple activity, we would be able to surface some perspectives and have some conversations. And I think that this tool, maybe one of the biggest values that this tool has for me as an educator is it's a conversation tool. Anytime we're using it, it surfaces conversations. Students are able to hear each other's perspectives, stories, to dig a bit deeper, to ask some questions, and to really think about where things sit and what's connected. So now I hope we're ready to dive a little bit deeper with the tool. And on this first page, there's an example of a compass sort. The sort that's on the page is taken from the PEACE indicators. You could also take it from one of the talks or the speeches or the videos that are in the resource pack. And it's just a collection of terms here. And the idea is that you work with a group and you sort these out to see where they fit. As you're sorting, you can have a conversation. There might be some disagreements, and in that disagreement, you get to hear other people's perspectives. You'll make agreements, and you can place it somewhere on the compass. As we're together in a virtual space, I'd like to share a virtual version of this for you, just so you can take a moment to practice. I'm putting the link in the chat, and it's a Canva link, which should go straight to a template, and you can make your own copy. So this is just taking the resource straight from the resource pack and turning it into something virtual. And if you click on it to go to your own copy, maybe give me a thumbs up if it worked. Then you can try it out. Awesome, it's working. Okay. While I'm talking, you can even play around with the virtual compass sort. And this is always open for you to use as well. It's free for you to use. As you're playing with this, I'll keep talking. There are many, many perspectives on peace, and each of those perspectives is unique. And something that we added in the chat were concerns around how we really address this. If we are giving these tools to students and putting it in their hands, then it's conversations for them to have, and they can lead the research conversations, the research questions that go further, and actions. If we want to work towards peace in our classrooms or take a step in helping guide students, we want to use systems thinking to be able to recognize and to utilize those different perspectives to solve problems. The Sustainability Compass, it's a systems thinking tool, and it helps simulate discussion, as I've said. It helps inform decision-making. It can help us navigate these complex issues, and it can support critical thinking. It encourages perspective taking, and helps us see that big picture. And you can do this activity with photos, with books, with any set of terms, and much more. If we're sharing again the screen, I'll go through the other pages of the compass. I think we've lost the sharing. Katja, do you mind sharing again? So I'll just quickly go through some other uses of the compass, if you mind just scrolling down a bit. So that was a sort. You can take one of the terms and put it in the center of the compass, and then really, really unpack and investigate that one issue. You can do it with a photo as well, or a video. So we go deeper into one concept or issue. Scrolling further down. This brings us to another tool. So this tool is the systems iceberg. And we've got some examples of ways you can use the iceberg in different ways as well. I think we've all seen an iceberg being used as a metaphor for something that's visible and invisible. I've seen it with culture, the iceberg, where you see certain cultural activities or elements, and then below is the reason why we have it. Or I've seen it with performance, where you see the performance at the top, and then underneath we have practice and really developing a skill of trill or hand movements or something like that. This one is specifically for systems. And as we go deeper into the systems that are driving an issue. You can see 4 elements here. And there's a few different tools here within the resource pack where you can look at issues within the classroom. You can connect it to piece issues within the resource pack, like of the videos and the speakers. And also, we can use it to analyze our way down the iceberg and then innovate back up, which is further down the resource pack. And just to be get a bit more familiar with this tool, I'd like us to all just think about, you don't need to add in the chat, but just think about an issue related to peace and security that we are having within our classrooms, within our schools, or within our organizations. We don't need to think too big here. So thinking about one issue that we're having within our classrooms, our schools, or our organizations, you can think about that issue. So starting at the top of the iceberg, what's visible? What made you think about that issue? What do you see? What do you hear? If it were on the news or on social media, what would you be seeing about that? Then shifting to below the water, below what's visible, that first level. What are patterns that are driving that issue? What are things that you might have seen over time if we take a moment and look? What are repeated behaviors or trends that you might notice that led up to those events? And then below that is systems and structures. What institutional or social structures were reinforcing this or driving this? What power structures might be driving this? And then farther below are the mental models. What beliefs, what assumptions, what values are really driving all of this? Maybe they're common. Maybe there's something that's shared within a culture. And that's why we might be creating those systems and why we might be seeing those patterns. So that's just a quick walkthrough of going down the iceberg. When we scroll, yeah, you're on the right page now. We can also innovate our way up. So we can work with students to analyze an issue going deeper and deeper and deeper, but then we can flip the iceberg. So once we identify our mental model, we can flip it to something positive, something we want to see, and then think, if we had this mental model, what systems would it drive? What patterns would we see if we had those systems? And what events would we see if those patterns were happening? And that's a way to innovate up. And if students are taking action, then they can actually think about their own sphere of influence, their own sphere of power and control, and where they can take action at any of those levels of the iceberg. Taking action at any level is okay. Being aware of what level you're taking action is incredibly powerful. So looking at the iceberg, at which level do you think your students might have the most impact? Where do you feel you yourself as an educator has the most leverage? If you'd like to share your response, you can do so in the chat. If you'd like to keep this to yourself, that's fine too. Thank you for doing a quick run through of all of these tools here, and for trying out the virtual resource. I'm going to pass this back to my colleagues. I think Katja and Amanda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate, for taking us through that. We love all of the systems thinking tools, the Compass, the Iceberg, and it's been a really great partnership with you all over the 2 years. So thank you for sharing that section. And it's really great to see what people are putting in the chat about how these tools are really helping students understand problems in deeper ways. So I want to quickly pass it over. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to hear from one of our colleagues, Jennifer Richmond, and she is going to share a little bit about the work she's doing with Teachers for Peace. And while she's doing that, I encourage everyone to, think about what we've talked about. And if you have already used this resource, we'd love to just think about your experiences, hear your experiences. Feel free to put that in the chat. But first, we're going to hear from Jennifer. So over to you, Jennifer, to hear about your work with Teachers for Peace. I think you're on mute, Jennifer.
Hello, hello.
We can hear you now.
You can. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I'm with two of my most amazing students.
Hello.
Who were playing around, and now I cannot see the visuals, but I can see you. So hello, everybody. I'm so honored to be here. My name is Jennifer Marie Richmond, and I'm an English teacher based in Argentona, Barcelona, Spain. I'm also the founder of Teachers for Peace, which is an amazing organization of female volunteers from around the globe who have come together to give free lessons to women and children suffering from the ravages of war and displacement. Basically, everything started for me as just a simple message. In March of 2022, I had a friend who was living in Ukraine, and I asked her how I could help when Russia invaded. And she said, please just keep my children occupied and focused on something positive, and maybe let them sit into your classes. And so that's how Teachers for Peace started. We started with 2 teachers, and now today we are more than 70 teachers around the globe. We've given over 3,500 free classes to students affected by war and displacement. And what I've learned is that when conflict enters the classroom, it doesn't come as a topic. It comes as an emotion. So silence, confusion, fear, sometimes anger, sometimes extreme giddiness could also be an effect. And as a teacher, we must recognize that moment when a student asks something and we're not quite sure how to respond. So what I really appreciate of this resource that Amanda has shared is that it doesn't ask us to have all of the answers. It gives us a way to hold space. Tools like the iceberg model are extremely helpful for this. Instead of saying at the level of events, we start talking about the patterns that we see, what systems are shaping this, what beliefs are underneath. And through this, something shifts. So students, like my students here, they might shift from reacting to reflecting. And that's the goal. They ask, who is right? And then they ask, why is this happening? And then eventually they start asking, what can I do? So I remember one student in particular who didn't want to speak at all at the beginning of our classes. And so we would start with simple prompts like, what does peace mean to you? Or where do you feel safe? And And as I was preparing this presentation for Amanda, Amanda said, "Well, what other examples could you give?" Another example I would give would be a picture, a slideshow with a bunch of different cats enacting different emotions. And then I would ask the students, which cat do you feel like? And by doing this, I'm not putting the pressure on them, but they're able to relate without having to admit how they feel. So I think that this is very important. So we're asking the students to move from reacting to reflecting. We're asking them to move from how I feel, what is right, what is happening, to this is where I am and this is what I can do. Nothing more is asked of me. And we start with simple prompts like, what does peace mean to you? What do you feel when you're safe? Which cat do you feel like? Which emoji do you feel like? Which emoji do you relate to? And so this is when it becomes very clear to me that peace education, it starts with a voice. So for me, this work is not about explaining the world to students. It's about helping students make sense of the world that they're living in, helping them to feel like their voices matter and that they are not powerless. And so that's why these resources that Amanda has given us, they feel so valuable to me. And it gives teachers a way to do something in a structured way, a thoughtful way, and a safe way, because peace is not something that we wait for. It's something that we begin building every day in our classrooms, in our homes, and in our communities. So here I am today, and I'm accompanied by my students here in Spain, but I'm also accompanied by my students in Syria, by my students in Afghanistan, and by my students in Ukraine. And so I'm so grateful to be here, and I'm so grateful to Amanda and all of your communities for sharing these resources with all of us. So Amanda, back to you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for sharing. The work that she's doing with Teachers for Peace is really, really outstanding. And I would ask you, Jennifer, if you could reshare the link in the chat. That would be, really helpful, because we've had a lot of different chat messages across the session, and people here can check it out and see if they would like to, volunteer with you and get involved and learn a little bit more about what you're doing. And thank you also to your students for joining.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm going to give my a mwah, mwah, mwah. Thank you all.
Thank you. So before, since we're getting to the end of the hour here, before we move into kind of some closing thoughts and, next steps and actions, I would like to take maybe, 2 quick comments from maybe some educators that have already used this guide. Our educators committee has been working with these tools for a while, so maybe someone from there, or another comment. We'd love to take 2 quick comments. So it would be great if you could raise your hand. We'd love to hear about maybe your experience working with the guide, or maybe something else that you've done in your classroom that has worked very well. Let's give you all a second to think. And please keep your comments short, because we are almost at the hour. That would be really appreciated. So I see Zohib has raised their hand.
Yes. So, can I speak?
Yes, yeah, just a quick comment would be wonderful.
Yeah, so basically, I've been following the program like since, 7. So like, we actually have this same thing going on that is in our school. So I'm from Beacon House School System, Pakistan. So, we have this program called SPS, Student Protection Program. So now we're working on the, the well-being and, for the well-being of the students, like the students who face bullying in the school or, who face some sort of issues in the school. So, we are working on these things right now, and we have like a student protection committee, like students, they are working for the students along with the help of the teachers. And I was listening to your program, and so many thoughts are coming in my mind, like how I can, like we can, implement these, like guidelines and everything in our program as well. So, this is really interesting, about peace and war and the current situation going on. And, how students are actually, they're mentally suffering from these things. Because I've seen like students from grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, talking about war, how the world is ending. And, these guidelines can actually help us, to, like change their mind, change this perspective, from war to peace and everything. So this is really helpful, as a part of, SDG, like team lead in my school. This is really interesting for me.
Thank you very much. We have a few Beacon House schools that are part of the Global Schools community, so it's great to have you on. So we'll go to Osama. I saw your hand next.
Hello for everyone, and hello for our teacher, Jennifer. I just want to tell you about expressing emotions through pictures. So sometimes people don't need to express feelings or things that they are experiencing. For instance, if someone is fear, so maybe he or she don't need to say that they are afraid of something. So putting a picture or something represent this feeling is like a great accomplishment to us. So thanks for like telling us this information.
Thank you very much, and great to hear also the similar idea on the pictures. So I know we're 1 minute over time, but I will take these last three. But just if you can make your comment very brief, just a few seconds here. So I'll go to Sophia, and then Morel, and then Manga.
Morel Mason, thank you very much for those wonderful ideas. I'm engaged in ESD since 2021, and I would like to thank the team behind all those brilliant activities and what you are doing. You are doing great, and this changed my teaching way and social and emotional learning with the emojis, expressing feeling, and talking about issue related to our planet is really impressive in our country, and it move students' motivation and engagement. And we are trying projects. We like to submit them, planet rescue, and planting trees, cleaning our beach, removing plastic bag from our school. And the idea of compass is very good for critical thinking, and I will try it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I'll just take Sophia next, and then I will close the session.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sophia Musa Ibrahim, and I'm live from Kaduna State, Nigeria. So I want to appreciate you for this wonderful program and for giving me the opportunity to a kind of build peace that we lack for so many years. In my school, students, I'm in a school where they are the same sex as an all girls school, but they are not interacting, they are not relating because of religion different. They are always in crisis, so they don't even sit together. Meanwhile, they are in the same classroom, but they are segregated. But through this platform, I was able, and I'm still able to kind of build unity among the students. I was able to take this peace talk to the classroom, teach the students to interact, to mix with one another, and they kind of learn together in peace and harmony. The same thing to teachers. I was able to unite my colleagues in the school. Before now, they're all segregated. They don't mix up. We're not united. because of crisis here and there. But through through this program, I was able to kind of build the courage, call teachers together to be an agent of change, to be an advocate, since their voice has strong, to be able to use this strong voice to build the nation, build the students, to unite, to build peace, to reign everywhere in our community. So I'm so grateful. I just want to appreciate you for giving me that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So unfortunately, we're a little bit over time. So I think I'm going to move to close our session here, just because we have some quick final announcements for everyone here. And I do apologize if anyone had other comments, but we do have so many sessions that we host, so we encourage you to join other sessions as well. So just quickly to say, the resource is free and available on our website on agesofglobalization.com and globalschoolsprogram.org. We invite you to explore this resource as well as many other resources we have on other topics related to sustainable development. And we also encourage you to join the Ages of Globalization project and the Global Schools Program Network. If your students want to participate in our ongoing social media challenge, they can use hashtag #OurVoiceOurPower and hashtag You and At Your Doorstep. And we amplify those posts. Always feel free to reach out to me and Katya on any of these things as well. So we're just really grateful to have you here. And just as a reminder to all of us is, peace really starts with the choices that we all make and the words that we use and the trust that we're building in our communities. And it starts in our classrooms. So we really thank you for, thinking about these difficult topics, for really supporting your students and for being a part of this global community that we've built all together over the years. So grateful to Compass Education as well, to Nicole, to Kate, to Elaine, to everyone that supported these resources, to Jennifer, to everyone that contributed today. So yes, thank you so much. Hopefully I didn't forget anything, and also happy Earth Day to everyone as well. So thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the next
Grateful.
session.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. It was really insightful session.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.